In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a Copilot template and then also how to create a new Copilot from a template using Copilot Studio. Let's first understand what a template is. Well, a template is basically, think of it where I go and I create a Copilot, which is a starting point that I will use as a future starting point going over and over. So I will create a Copilot, which is basically the starting point I want. Then I'll convert that starting point into a template, which will give me the ability to reuse that over and over. And then I can start creating new bots with the same starting point over and over. Let's talk about why templates are important. So when you're thinking about building a template for a Copilot, the reason this would be super important is imagine if you are a corporation that wants to be able to say, here's our standard template that we want to create for all new Copilots within my organization, or I come up with a different set of starting points. Let's say that you're a solution provider that wants to be able to say, I've built this really good starting point and I can use this to accelerate for new projects as I go. This would be why templates are super important, and you'll find that this will be very useful for you to be able to take your existing implementation and be able to duplicate it over and over again as another starting point. To go ahead and warn you that this content is going to be pretty in-depth and pretty technical. So just be aware that you're going to have to use command line interface tools or CLI tools. I'm going to walk you through all the different stages and downloading them and make this as simple as possible. But the one thing is that you can go fast forward through the video to different places. So if you already have the CLI tools and things like that, feel free to do so. So let's start with understanding that we're needing to go and get the Power Platform CLI or command line interface. And what we would want to do is you can go search for this. You can find it in the docs and things of that nature. I'll put links down in the description in the video, so definitely check that out. But if you notice, I'm just looking at the Power Platform CLI docs here. And if you scroll down, you'll see a part where it says Install Microsoft Power Platform CLI. And in this, you'll see here that it will tell you that you have these different methods that you can do it. Now, the method I'm going to show you here today is going to be how to do it with Visual Studio Code as an extension. I feel like this is the easiest way to do it, and I also feel like it gives you some tooling to make it easier to do this over and over again, and I'll kind of highlight that as we go forward. So you can click this link and it will go and it will take you to the Power Platform Tools for Visual Studio Code extension. So the first thing you'll see here is that you need to download and install Visual Studio Code. If you haven't downloaded this before, you can go to it and you just simply click that you want to download it for whatever operating system it is that you would like. Now, once you've installed Visual Studio Code, you'll see that it gives you some instructions here on how to do this. And it basically is telling you need to go to the Visual Studio Marketplace. Now, it's kind of interesting if you're trying to figure out how to do this. So I'm going to show you directly how to do this inside of Visual Studio Code. Now that we've installed Visual Studio Code and we've opened it up, what you're going to see is that you're going to have to install the Power Platform tools. Now, the way that you do this is you come down to extensions here. You can see that I've already installed them here, but if you just type, Power Platform tools, you'll see that just like here, there are all these different buttons that you can push to be able to install. So what you're going to do is you're actually going to go through the install on this, and the install for the Power Platform tools will take a few minutes to actually complete. However, let's move forward assuming that we've already got these installed. What happens once it's installed is that you end up with this, which is a new button on your toolbar on the left, and you'll see that it says Power Platform on it. And then up here, you'll see different auth profiles, which is, if you're like me, I have many different development environments and things of that nature. Again, this goes back to why I really like using Visual Studio Code to do this because I can put in my different auth implementations here. And you'll see here that I've got a environment that I've already got authentication that I've already got here for my Power Platform profile. And then down here, you'll actually see the environments and the solutions that are within side of that particular environment. And you'll see it probably collapse like this, but the idea is just to click on your default environment or whatever environment it is that you want to start building within. So the other thing I want you to see is I want you to see that there is a button here for terminal, and you can say new terminal. And once you've created this new terminal, now we are at a point where we can interact with the Power Tools CLI. Okay, so now that we've downloaded the CLI and we've got everything ready to go, now let's go and create ourselves a template using an existing Copilot as the mechanism to be the starting point for future Copilots. Okay, so let's start with the documentation on this. So what you're looking for is in the Microsoft Power Platform developer documentation, there's actually something that talks about tools that we have. And one of the tools is the Power Platform CLI reference. And this will be important because what you're looking for is the pack Copilot. And this is the command that lets you do things around Copilots. And there's all kinds of things to go explore here. I encourage you to go look at what all you can do here. It has a lot of great capabilities. However, the one we're going to focus on is there are two key capabilities. The first one we're going to focus on is this one, which is the extract a template. And don't worry, check the links below and you will get a direct link to this content. All right. So if we go to this is the instructions on how we will actually create the template itself. Now, the trick will be that we will need to extract it from an existing Copilot that we've built, which is the starting point that we want to use going forward for additional Copilots. So the first thing we need to do is think about, well, what is the information we need to collect? And you'll see here in the command that we're going to need the environment ID, the bot ID, and the template file name. Now, my recommendation for you is to create yourself a simple text file where we're going to go collect this information, and I'm going to show you where to go inside of Copilot Studio to get each of these different things. So let's start with jumping into Copilot Studio. So now that we're inside of Copilot Studio, and I've basically just went in and found a Copilot that I would like to duplicate. This is one that I've done and played around with the Microsoft Store. It has a lot of different things you can see here. It's got like a schedule appointment capability. You'll see that if we go and look at this, we can go into the system. We can see the conversational boosting topic is actually set to a Bing custom search. All of this is configured to get going. So imagine this is the template that I would want to start from. The first thing you want to do is you want to say, okay, well, what was the information that I needed to collect? And in that information that we needed to collect, one of them was the environment ID. So let's go and figure out where the environment ID is. So if you go under settings, you go to Copilot details, and then you go to advanced, you're going to see that if you scroll down, you'll see the environment ID. Now this is a little tricky in the fact that you would think that if you copy this to the clipboard, that will give you everything you need. But the reality is that the default is appended here. So what we want to do is we want to copy this in, and we want to remove everything that's before that first number. So this is your actual environment ID for this particular implementation. So now we want to go grab the bot ID. So where can we get the bot ID? Well, you would think that this is the bot ID right here, but that's actually not the bot ID. So where you go to get the bot ID is you actually want to go in the URL. And if you look in the URL, there is a point where it says bots. And then behind this, you will see the actual bot ID. So this in the URL is what we want to grab. And then we want to go and drop that into our text file. So that way we have it if we need it again. And then as far as the template file name is really anything you want it to be. In this case, I'm going to call it something like Microsoft Store Default Template dot YAML. And if you want to know why I put the .yaml and things of that nature, then let's just take a look back at our documentation. And you'll see here in the documentation that you just need to come up with a name .yaml to be able to pull this together. All right, so now we've got everything we need collected, and we're just gonna move over to Visual Studio Code. Okay, so now we're back in Visual Studio Code, and we're going to run the command to be able to create our template. And so the first thing we'll want to do is we'll want to make sure we go in this terminal window, and then you're going to put in PAC Copilot, and then you're going to do extract dash template. And once we've done this, you're going to want to put in a dash dash and type environment, and then you put a space in. And what we do is on another screen here, I'm just going to grab my environment ID and pop that in. And then I'm going to continue on by saying dash dash, and we do bot. Oh, sorry, dash dash bot like this. Make sure that you don't put a space in there. And then we want to grab the bot ID from what we grabbed earlier, and we will paste that in. Then our last one is going to be dash dash template, and then notice that it's a capital F, file name. And in this case, we already came up with what our file name is, so I'm just going to copy that over, and I'm going to place that right here. So I'm going to pause here so that you can take a look at this command, and you can see that what we're doing is we're using the pack command with Copilot, and then we're extracting the template from this environment, this bot ID, and we're going to save it as this specific YAML file. So I'm going to hit enter and have it run. And what you'll see is you'll see it connect just like to the environment here that we had. And you'll see right here that it created this YAML file for me. Now this is where I go ahead and copy this YAML file for future use, and we will move to the next section. Okay, now it's time for us to go take the template that we created and actually create a new Copilot from the template that we used as a starting point. Now, again, the documentation link for where this is on Microsoft's website is going to be in the notes below, so please make sure you check out those links. But we're back at the Pack Copilot documentation that is in the Power Platform Developer documentation. Again, in the Pack Copilot section, this is all the commands that you have for being able to interface through the CLI with Copilots. So we did the extract template before, so now what we're going to do is the Pack Copilot create. Now, the documentation on this has got a little bit of a tweak to it. I'll explain it for you, but you'll notice here that we need to collect display name, schema name, solution, template file name, and an optional is environment, but I encourage you to put it into your command. And with that, that is what you will need to be able to actually create your new Copilot. So now that we know that, again, I highly recommend that what you do is create yourself a notepad file, and you'll see here's what we had from the one before. Now I've basically went ahead and copied the URL to, or the file location of the YAML file template that was created in the last step. I will show you where that is again so that you guys can see it again. And you'll see I've went ahead and copied my environment ID, but there are things that I continue to need. I need to get the display name, schema name, and solution. Well, the trick is you could go create yourself a solution, an empty solution that through the CLI, but most people are probably going to want to be able to do this through the user interface. So I'm going to show you how to do this through the user interface because it is a prerequisite before we start actually doing any commands, and we want to be able to create the solution. So what I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to establish this because all of these things are things that are going to be the names of the new bot and things of that nature. So in this case, I'm going to call this like Microsoft Store test for this. And then this is the part that isn't really documented well, but I want to make sure that you know that what to do here. So in order to be able to create this, you need to be able to name the schema, and the schema needs a specific naming scheme to work. And the naming scheme that you need to be able to put in to make this work is you must start it with CRDEB underscore and then what you want to call the schema name. And this must be unique. So all of these things need to be unique. So in this case, I'm just going to call it the same thing. I'm going to call it Microsoft Store Test as my schema name. And then as far as the solution is concerned, I'm going to call it Microsoft Store Test. And we'll just call it Sol just so that you guys know that it's the solution name. All right. So now that we've come up with the names that we want to use, let's go take this information and apply it in and start creating our new Copilot. Okay, so now we're going to go collect the information that we need or create the things that we need to create. Understand that we've already done all of the getting the template. So now we're working on creation instead. And a lot of people don't know the best way to do this or the easy way to do it. So I'm going to show you the easiest way, in my opinion, to do this. So if I just go inside a Copilot Studio and I go into any Copilot, in this case, we're in the one that we used as the template, you can go into the settings and then you can go to Copilot details. And then there is an export button. If you hit this export button, it's a quick way to take you over to the solutions part of the Power Platform and allow you to be able to create solutions and such. So in this case, what we want to do is create an empty solution that is our new destination for our bot. And remember, we had already created what we were going to call all of these things in our notepad file. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy in what we called it. So this is what we selected. We just create with the publisher, and then we click the create button. Now what this is going to do is it's going to create an empty solution for us. It's not going to have anything in it, but now we have a destination to be able to create our new Copilot in from the template. So now let's jump back over to Visual Studio and run our command so that we can create our new Copilot. Okay, so now we're back in Visual Studio. And what I want to first point out is that right here is the file location for the template. So that's where I was able to copy that from when we created the template and put it in my notepad. Now, let's go ahead, and I suggest having dual monitors so you can have the notepad and the documentation on another screen. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through and type in the command to be able to create the new Copilot from the template. So we're going to start with pack and then Copilot. And then we're going to do create this time. And when we do create, we're going to do a space, and then we need to fill in the additional information. Now, this information, again, is in my notepad that I've already shown before. And so you do display name, and notice that it's camel case, so that's a capital N. And then you do a space, and you go get your display name from your notepad file. So I'm going to copy this in, and in this case, we're calling it Microsoft Store Test. And then we'll do the next variable that we need to pass, which is going to be schema name. Oh, and make sure that you keep that camel case. And this is the part that's not really documented really well. So this is sort of the trick to it. If you don't do this right, it will fail and you will get an error. But what you need to put in is you need to put in a starting name within the schema. So, and it needs to be in a specific format. So in the case of this, you always want to start it with CRDEB underscore, and then let's go grab the schema name that we have already created and drop it in. So again, make sure that you put that CRDEB and know that all of these things need to be unique names. Okay, so the next thing is we want to do solution. And the solution is the solution name that we just created. And we drop that in. And then we need to give it the template file name, and make sure that you notice F and N in this are capitalized. Then you'll get the full path that we had already copied over. You'll see it here as well if you need it. You'll drop that in. And then we got one last one to do, and that is going to be the one that I said was optional, but I recommend that you do this one, which is environment. And with that, I'm going to go grab my environment ID that we got earlier, and we're going to drop this in. And I'm going to stop here just so that you can see this and understand that it's pack Copilot create -- display name. And in this case, what you want to call the display name, schema name with that CRDB underscore with your schema name. Again, must be unique. Then you do the solution, which is your basically a solution name that you created the empty solution for. Then you have the template file name, and then you have with the direct path, and then you also have the environment ID. Now, once I hit enter on this, this will take a second for it to do it, because at this point you'll see that there are 13 components, and it's going through a process of loading this up and being able to bring in all of the template and instantiate me a brand new bot or a brand new Copilot that will have everything we need in it. And you can see that just like that, it went ahead and it created it. So let's get back over into Copilot Studio. Okay, so now we're back over inside of Copilot Studio. And what I'm going to do is click on Copilots. And just like this, just like magic, you can see that we now have a new one called Microsoft Store Test. Notice the icon is the same. Notice that once we go in it, be aware that it does take time for it to provision. So if you happen to have a really big template, know that it may take a minute or two for it to actually provision. So when we did the creation process, just be aware that once it's created, it also, just like any new Copilot that you have, goes through a provisioning process to be able to finish out. But in this case, what you're going to see here is that you can see we've got the schedule appointment. You can see that we've got all of these different components in here. We've got in conversational boosting. You've got that the Bing custom search implementation and everything. So this created exactly what we were looking for as a base template implementation of a Copilot. So I hope you found this informational video very helpful. And if you would, please like and subscribe to my channel. And as always, you can always try Copilot Studio at aka.ms/try Copilot Studio.